Before the video gets started today, I would like to give a special shout out to my patrons: Bernadette Reeve, Jacob Clancy, Katze der Nacht, Coley Claudette, Crow at theSOL, Minster Elana C. Henderson, Antonio Contreras, Kahlest Enoch, Ghost Eagle 1991, Howard Rholetter, Brian S. Morrow, Mathew Bergman, Jen Parsons, Jen M., the Schmeister, and Brenda Welby. Thank you all so much, and if you'd like a special shout out, consider becoming one of my patrons. And now, let's get into it. Welcome back to another Serial Killer Saturday. Today we are exploring the case of Samuel Little, who, once all of his crimes have been confirmed, will be a total of 90 murders. Samuel Little was born on June 7th of 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia, possibly during one of his mother's prison stints. Little has claimed his mother was a lady of the night. Soon after his birth, his family moved to Ohio. He grew up in Lorraine and was brought up mainly by his grandmother. He attended Hawthorne Junior High School, where he had problems with discipline and achievement. In 1956, while still a high school student, Little was arrested for the first time and convicted for breaking and entering into a property in Omaha, Nebraska. He was then held in an institution for juvenile offenders. In the late 1960s, Little moved to Florida, where he lived with his mother. He worked as an ambulance attendant and then a cemetery worker. Having a strong physique, Little took up boxing during his prison time and considered himself a prize fighter at one point. Little did not continue his education after high school, spending most of his free time on the streets, engaging in petty theft and occasionally working part-time as a day laborer. Little was arrested again in 1961 and sentenced to 3 years in prison for breaking into a furniture store in Lorraine. He was then released in 1964, left Ohio, and shuttled between different states for the following few years. He made a living through robbery and theft. By 1975, Little had been arrested 26 times in 11 states for crimes including theft, assault, attempted rape, fraud, and attacks on government officials. Little spent much of his time with prostitutes and pimps. In 1982, he was arrested in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and charged with the murder of 22-year-old prostitute Melinda LaPrey, who had gone missing in September that year. A grand jury declined to indict Little for the murder of LaPrey, but while under investigation, Little was transferred to Florida to be brought to trial for the murder of 26-year-old Patricia Mount, whose body was found in the fall of 1982. Prosecution witnesses identified Little in court as a person who spent time with Mount on the night before her disappearance. Due to the mistrust of witnesses' testimonies, Little was acquitted in January of 1984 of Mount's murder. Little then moved to California, where he stayed in the vicinity of San Diego. In October of 1984, Little was arrested for attacking and beating 2 prostitutes and was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. He was released in February of 1987 and soon moved to Los Angeles, where he committed several murders. Little was arrested on September 5th of 2012 at a homeless shelter in Louisville, Kentucky, after authorities used DNA testing to establish that he was involved in the murder of Carol Elford, killed on July 13th of 1987, Audrey Nelson, killed on August 14th of 1989, and Guadalupe Abadacha, killed on September 3rd of 1987. All three women were killed and later found on the streets of Los Angeles. Little was extradited to Los Angeles, where he was charged on January 7th of 2013. A few months later, the police said that Little was being investigated for the involvement in dozens of murders committed in the 1980s, which until then had been undisclosed. In connection with the new circumstances in the state of Mississippi, the case of the murder of LaPree was reopened, in which Little was acquitted in 1984. In total, Little was tested for involvement in the murders of 60 women. The trial for Samuel Little for the murders of Elford, Nelson, and Abadacha began in September of 2014. The prosecution presented the DNA testing results as well as a testimony of witnesses who were attacked by the accused at different times during his criminal career. On September 25th of 2014, Little was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On the day of the verdict, Little continued to insist on his innocence. As of 2016, Little was serving a sentence at the California State Prison in Los Angeles County. The case took a turn, however, on November 9th of 2018, when Little decided to confess to the 1996 fatal strangulation of Melissa Thomas. On November 13th of 2018, Little was charged with the 1994 murder of Denise Christie Brothers in Odessa, Texas, after having confessed the crime to a Texas Ranger in May of 2018. The Ector County, Texas District Attorney and Wise County Sheriff's Office also announced on November 13th that Little had confessed to dozens of murders and may have committed more than 90 across 14 states between 1970 and 2005. On November 15th of 2018, the Russell County, Alabama District Attorney announced that Little had earlier that month confessed to the 1979 murder of 23-year-old Brenda Alexander, whose body was found in Phoenix City. On November 16th of 2018, Macon, Georgia sheriffs announced that Little had credibly confessed to the 1977 strangling murder of an unidentified woman and the 1982 strangling murder of 18-year-old Fredonia Smith. In the fall of 2018, Little confessed to Louisiana State Police the 1982 murder of 55-year-old Dorothy Richards and the 1996 murder of 40-year-old Daisy McGuire. Both of their bodies were found in Houma, Louisiana. On November 19th of 2018, Harrison County, Mississippi Sheriff Troy Peterson said that Little had confessed to strangling 36-year-old Julia Critchfield in the Gulfport area in 1978 and dumping her body off a cliff. On November 20th of 2018, Lee County, Mississippi law enforcement officials announced that Little had admitted to killing 46-year-old Nancy Carol Stevens in Tupelo in 2005, and that the case would be presented to a grand jury in January of 2019. On November 21st of 2018, Richland County, South Carolina authorities announced that Little had confessed to murdering 19-year-old Evelyn Weston, whose body was found near Fort Jackson in 1978. Little also confessed to having killed 20-year-old Rosie Hill in Marion County, Florida in 1982. On November 27th of 2018, the FBI announced that a violent criminal apprehension program team had confirmed 34 of Little's confessions and was working to match the remainder of Little's confessions to known murders or suspicious deaths. Little began making the confessions in exchange for a transfer out of the LA County prison in which he was being held. One included his confession to a previous cold case homicide in Prince George's County, Maryland. previously one of only 2 homicide cases in the county with unidentified victims. The FBI released a list of previously unsolved murders and a map of their locations that Little attributed to himself. Hopefully, society will get sufficient answers before Little passes away, and for the families of his victims, may they finally have closure as a result. I am also bringing to you an update on a case I did in May of 2017 on William Huff. Huff was a serial killer who was released because the board felt he was too old to hurt anyone else and that he was seemingly harmless. The update is that he is now back in prison due to a violation of his parole. The violation was that he had a young girl in his apartment, and as part of his release, he cannot under any circumstances have any children in his residence. Although police have confirmed that the girl was not harmed in any way, I would question the level of intelligence that any persons would put their child in someone's home who has been released for said crimes. Additionally, Huff knew what his terms of release were, yet he allowed the child to be in his home anyway. I have linked that video in the comments section so you can watch that if you didn't already. And I would love to know your thoughts on both of these cases. How could a killer with this many cases not be splattered all over the headlines? Especially since it was just updated just a few weeks ago. And do you think Huff should be released back into society, or is he still a threat to innocent children after all these years? I'll be curious to see the response in the comment section below. If you have a serial killer you would like me to do a video on, you can email me at duchessdark676@gmail.com or send me a message on any of my social media platforms. See you next time.